here, and welcome to another episode of Book Banter. Tonight, I'm super excited to talk to Michelle Nicholson. I have heard her read her poetry multiple times around town, and I have read her poetry, which you should also get your hands on. And the experience of listening to her read and then reading her work is almost like it's indescribable because the experiences are so totally different and so equally amazing. So I'm excited to talk to her this evening. And all of y'all can join the conversation. If you have a question, type them in the comments and we will answer them during the event. I'm going to read Michelle's bio. M.A. Nicholson is a New Orleans poet, editor, educator, journalist, and co-founder of LMNL Arts, an alumna of Loyola University, and an M.F.A. graduate from the University of New Orleans, where she served as an associate poetry editor for Bayou Magazine. M.A. was the recipient of the 2021 Andrea-Saunders Gereighty Academy of American Poets Award and has work featured in the Best New Poets of 2022. Her debut poetry collection, Around the Gate from Word Books, was selected by Judge Carolyne Wright for the 2023 Hilary Tham Capital Collection Prize. Check out all of those books, by the way. They're all amazing, just like Around the Gate. So, without further ado, I am going to welcome Michelle to Book Banter. Hi!
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for joining me. Um, there's like this list of people that I have thought about asking to Book Banter, and then like I just don't get to it. And you came in to Blue Cypress like a few weeks ago, and you're like, I can do that. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, you totally can. Thank you.
Love to talk
So
about
wonderful,
books. Talk about books all day long.
right? Like just being able to have an opportunity to really sit and talk to these amazing like artists and authors and poets, and that opportunity alone is worth this. And just because people are watching us online, it's still like just us having a conversation because we can't see them.
Well, I mean, we get to see each other at events all the time, but to really just be able to sit down and talk about the thing that we love. And I want to know what you're reading because you're always reading really great stuff. I teach, and so 60 to 70% of what I'm reading is from the canon. Um, that's a lie. 80 to 90% of what I read is student writing. And so it's summertime, and I'm really looking forward to reading some books that I'm going to teach next year, but as well as just some stuff for fun. We were talking about the Sealy Challenge earlier.
Yeah, tell me about this because I don't know about this challenge.
Well, it's a poet, and so you read a collection of poems a day, and then you post the book. And of course, I just want to kind of write in conversation with those books as well because I'm on summer break and I'm already doing a 10-day sprint with Kate Root. And so I'm like, if I can do 10, then I can do 30, right? And then that's June. And then I'm gonna maybe take a real break in July, which is not real. Uh, which is not a real thing. Well, because I have a thing that I'm doing in Dallas, and then I'm working on a manuscript, so I'm pretty excited about getting to that in July before I go back to school. Anyway,
Is
what are
that
you reading right now, Raina?
well? Okay, we're gonna pause a moment though. You said I'm working on a new manuscript. Is it more poet? Is it poetry?
It is.
Okay.
It's hybrid. Most of it's hybrid. Although I think in the book there's a lot more formal poetry, a lot more um, poetry that's crastic or in conversation with other poets or specific poems or even specific short stories like the Joyce Carol Oates story. Um, this one is even more obviously autobiographical. And there's, it's sort of the centerpiece right now is a long poem. And then I keep going back and forth about whether or not it should be a chapbook, but I think it's really kind of like the heart of this piece. And I can see that there's like one or two other pieces, other sort of collections or sort of related bodies that I've been working on, and so it feels like that one's really closed. And so I'm pretty excited about having some space for that project this summer. Know that the book tour will be over. The book will be a year old on the 15th.
June, next month, right?
Yeah, on the 15th.
That'll be nice. Well, I'm excited. So
Yeah.
whenever, for your next book, when you get there, take your time. But when you get there. So you asked what I was reading. So I am currently reading Umami by Laila, probably mispronouncing that, Jufresa. And I can put a link to this book. She is actually a Mexican-born author who I believe is currently living in Germany. The book is set in Mexico City. You wouldn't really know it, honestly. Mexico City does not play a huge role. It's definitely a city in Mexico, and we know it's Mexico City. But
there's like no apparent reason right now why the writer chose that setting.
I think because she's from there originally,
Okay.
and it's definitely that the family. There's a mother and father, and the mother is from the U.S. and the father is from Mexico, and they've decided to live in Mexico, and that is definitely an important part of the book. But where in Mexico doesn't it? It doesn't. It's not a huge if it were New Orleans would be a centerpiece character in the book.
But her being from there would be a convenient place to set it if any place in Mexico would suffice.
Yeah, and she did an
Knows the place.
interview a while ago, and it was about. She did mention that it was kind of allowed her to mentally go back and relive a lot of memories from her childhood, even though she hasn't been back in quite a few years. And so that's probably I imagine writing it, even though it's fiction, it allows you to kind of transport back to this time.
Back to preservation. Yeah, lovely.
Exactly.
Okay, so anyway, that's the setting. How far have you gotten into it?
I'm a little over halfway.
Really?
It's set in this apartment complex. There are 4 apartments, and so it's got that sort of close proximity with these 4 families, and they've all experienced some type of loss, and so how they're interacting with each other. And there's 4 kids throughout the families, but then they don't all have children, and so one of them, it was a very important choice not to have children, one of the couples. So it was you see all of that, and I really do enjoy that close proximity apartment. Always reminds me of what Tales of the City, even though it's not like that, but it is. If you've read Tales of the City, I feel like every apartment base, we're all stuck in this, we all have our separate lives, but we're all stuck in the same space.
It's like a structural developmental device for sure, and something that many people can relate to, and we are really all stuck in this place together. And so yeah, it's a really useful would you call it a trope? I don't know. Well,
it's a tool for sure.
I haven't started anything new. I've been reading some plays, but that's about it. And just I took 4 today out of the bag today, and I didn't teach it this year. I taught it the year before, and I just remembered how much I absolutely love that book. And I know that I'm biased because I studied with Carolyne Wright, but it is just such an engaging and challenging, but also easy read. And I think just speaking of structure, right, and development, and her use of field comp and her use of a line, and there are all these little things that thread it together and make it just you just flow through it. It's like a half a day, and you leave feeling all sorts of things and ready to take a walk around the neighborhood, which is my favorite thing. Yeah.
Well, and speaking of centering a book around one longer piece.
Hmm.
She does that in For Today. Um, and I do think, like, honestly, that poem could be taken out and stand alone.
Hmm.
But then when you put it in the context with these other shorter pieces, it really gives, it lets you see who she is a little bit even
Well, you have
more.
to have a frame, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It gives it a frame. The opening crown is just absolutely gorgeous. It's the most challenging piece. When I teach it, the kids are really a little disgruntled with me at first, but it's really kind of teaching you how to read the book, and kind of, it's using its own language within the poem itself, but it establishes some motifs and some sort of echoes in the way that it develops that you can see in the longer poem. It's really beautiful. Um, but I like to look at how things are sort of pieced together. It's like the engineering brain. We've read Joy Luck Club for the first, speaking of piece together, have you read Joy Luck Club? Because I read it for the first time last month.
Yes, but years ago. So details are not going to be something I can talk about, but I loved it. I remember
Pretty
really
lightweight.
enjoying it.
And just like a piece about, women, also like speaking of like the immigrant experience, and there's so much human geographical movement in the past few hundred years. Like it's sort of really the universal experience. I'm from a port city though, so like I know that I don't really have a very travel to places that are, but that's not true because Europe is like so microcosmic. It's like New Jersey, but with with the whole continent. Um, Anywho, but what really surprised me was sort of how I was wondering if she like wrote it backwards because there are references to these anecdotal memories, these narrative memories in the second half that are one or two sentence summaries of the stories that appear in the first half that are all stories that take place when the women are all children. The mothers and the daughters are children. Just so and I was like, did she write it backwards? Is that how she did that? But it was really lovely to sort of also have embedded into that structure, like looking back, how there could be one tone or one understanding that is very real and very relevant and true in the earlier part that then has a completely different resonance and a completely different understanding later. And I just like to be able to do that over the course of a book through different pieces that are all one sort of narrative arc. I really like that as like a kid, like it's something that you can read in a contemporary life, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, that was actually a question that I was going to ask you. How does it hold up? Because I read it like maybe 20 years ago.
I think
Um,
it's we
so
read it. So we read it. We went from Slaughterhouse Five to Night Sky with Exit Wounds, Ocean
mhm,
Long, which is, some like the heaviest lifting of the year. But we were prepped for it, because we did Thistlefoot, we did Slaughterhouse Five,
yeah,
we read some poetry. So they had some stamina, some ability to do that kind of lifting. And so we read Night Sky with Exit Wounds,
mm,
and then went over to Joy Luck Club. And I think having those two in juxtaposition also changes how you read this experience, because he talks a lot about his mother and women in the opening, the sort of like mythologized part of Ocean Vuong's collection.
yes,
Um, Talks a lot about women, and then you have the woman's point of view in Joy Luck Club. Now, of course, Vietnam, China, different, but I mean, I think that qualitatively and in all the important ways, the same.
mm-hmm.
And so it was a worthwhile read. And then we're going to open up with E.M. Tran's Daughters of the New Year next year. So that's like my next read. I just talked to Megan Holt with One Book One New Orleans, who got the books in, and so really excited about that partnership. And so that's what I'll be reading next, which also is like sort of structured backwards. It starts in the present and then it goes all the way back into the time of the myth. So really excited about that. Have you read it yet?
I have.
Oh my gosh. Tell me,
so
like, I can see your face.
It's so good. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, there's always this moment when you know someone and you're able to read their work. There's always this moment, and like in your heart, my heart of hearts, like I just know it's gonna be good, but there's always this piece in the back of your head that's like, oh, please be good. Like I'm not gonna like we if anyone says this isn't true, it's true. Okay. And I was maybe 20 pages into this book and I was like, thank you God, this is so good. Like I was just like so into it.
Number one, you know what I mean? She's so deliberate. It's got to be really keen, right? Just like sharp. I know when she read it was. Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah. Well, I think you're gonna love it, and I hope like maybe when you're teaching it, it'll overlap with one of the One Book One New Orleans events or something, and you can like.
Oh no, I mean they're definitely. She's gonna come and visit with my writers. Yeah, she's going to come and visit with my writers and the other writers in our CA program and our Certificate of Artistry program. Yeah, she's going to, and we're going to, they're going to write in conversation with the novel as well. And so I don't know if they're going to showcase those at Words and Music, but girl can dream,
That
huh?
would be fun.
I don't know if Megan's listening right now. It's not a secret. I just ask for what I want. It'll be great, right? Some of these writers.
Cut this little bit for social, and then I'll put it up there and I'll tag her.
Like just put her.
Interested.
Megan Hall's not listening, is she? We're so lucky in this city to have so many great writers, actually.
So many. It is amazing, like talking to people who aren't from here. Like I talk to a lot of booksellers all over the place, but readers, anyone, and they're like, oh, you know, who authors, and I can make pages and pages of authors that currently live and write here. And if you factor in people who used to live here or who have passed now, it's incredible.
Mm-hmm. The reading that I'm hosting Monday night, and I know it's not all of the people, but that's 8 people in the past 6 months.
Yeah.
Just in the circle, just in like in the distance of my voice.
Yeah, that's the wild thing too, is this is not an exhaustive list.
Exactly.
You know, you could probably host a new book event every 3 months and still have, you know, a full lineup of readers.
Thank goodness for Litwire helping us out with that.
He's so good. It's, you know what? It's so simple and so genius.
Mm-hmm. It's everything we need.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody, yeah, you should check out Litwire. Let's see if I can. I'll put a link to it because it is, it's just really a list of literary events in New Orleans, but it's got everything. And if you are visiting the city, check this out. Like, check it out. All different types. There's readings and new release, like launch parties, and just everything literary is on this list. So I'm going to put a link to it down here in the comments. If you live here, look at it all the time. If you're coming to visit, check it out before your visit. There's going to be good stuff to do on there. Do you listen to audiobooks, Michelle?
I have spent some time listening to audiobooks in the past year. I went on an epic road trip with my sister and my nephews last summer, and they're really into the audiobooks. And so, yeah, I've spent some time. But I haven't probably in the past 3 months. There's so many on Libby. How do you even begin I should just call you for references. You probably know.
I could definitely give you a few that I think are just really well produced audiobooks. And that would be a good place to like get yourself back into listening to audio. Because
Difference.
have you ever read Lincoln in the Bardo, George Saunders?
No, I don't
That's an
think.
amazing audio. It is a full cast. There are like 50 narrators.
Stop.
Every single different voice has a narrator. Even if there's one line, it's a different person, different actor. So that's a
Lincoln
fun
Sparta.
one.
That does
Mm-hmm.
sound fun. Just the title alone lets you know.
So yeah, okay.
People
Well,
have a real gift for talent for titles. I like, can it just be
well, I
one?
always wonder if it was like who came up with the title. Which one? Was it the one that was on your manuscript when you sent it in, or is this the one that the publisher was like, maybe this one?
The title of my book, Around the Gate,
Well,
or
yes.
like,
So about
oh,
yours, well, everyone. So
oh my
so
gosh, because Carolyne
everyone.
Wright did want to change my title, and I was like, no.
Oh,
No, she wanted
see,
to change it, get the opening line to the penultimate poem is it's something like Ezra Pound, Billy Collins, and Yusef Kabanyaka walk into a bar. And she wanted to use that as the title. I said, no, absolutely, that is false advertisement. I am not funny, okay? It was a joke about a joke. That's how unfunny I am. Please. Yeah, no, Around the Gate was, there was one other that we tossed around a little bit, and that was Maximum Velocity. But Around the Gate really, I think, is at the heart of it, and the title actually, I was kind of struggling with the poem that the line comes from. And I knew what I wanted to do with the poem in terms of like the emotional lifting and the dramatic situation, but it wasn't there. And I had a conversation with one of my elders at a party. She pulled me to the side and she said that my grandmother had come to her in a dream. And it was the story that she told me about the dream that sort of like it was the click. And I was like, okay, now I know what it is that I need to sort of like put into this poem that's going to do the emotional lifting and do the sort of reconciliation on the page that I was seeking. And it does, it changes. And then the second half of the poem, just sort of like, uh, my version of sonnet, because I'm really good at like following the rules, almost, but not quite. Like
rules
almost,
are meant
but
to
not
be broken.
quite, right? Not quite. Um, and then it switches to like a direct address to her. And so, yeah, that really felt in terms of like the really, really what binds the book together in terms of its intention, and where it's sprung from. That seemed like that really that's the title. It's the only title for that collection.
This, both of the other titles that possibilities that you mentioned would have given this a whole different feel. Like neither of those fit the feeling of this collection. And as much as we want to think that, covers we shouldn't be judging, right? On a cover or a title alone. We do. And Maximum Velocity would have been like I would not be expecting this collection with that.
No, because maximum velocity is like at the cusp, but not within the cusp. And that's essentially sort of like where a lot of the poems exist. So yeah, no, it wasn't.
No. Well, and then the other
Billy
one I would
Collins,
be
Ezra
expecting like
Pound.
right? I'd be expecting more like I don't know. It's comedy or more like general just references to things. I don't know. It just wouldn't be the same feel at all. So
No.
around the gate is perfect because yeah, it sets you up for mm, a, the gate is like your doorway or your entrance to something, and we're going to go through in our own way. We're going to dance around that, and it gives me that feel. And then as I read through your collection, that is it's I'm still in that world. So the setup with that title is perfect. So
Well,
good
it's
job holding out.
too, I felt too, it felt more colloquial, and I think that there's a sort of a communal, like there's always a receiver, almost always a receiver for the poem. And I sort of grew up too, there's this sort of, apply or reply image or sort of signification for me. Growing up, you know, people were always outside in the neighborhood, gathered at the house, and the men were always gathered around the gate on the side of the house, and the women would be, on the like at the front steps. And so there's this sort of image of like these men and women always sort of gathered at the front of the house, the men at the gate, the women at the door, in conversation at sunset. It's sort of like this sort of like ritual thing from my childhood that also is, I think foundational to the piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean it's what we
No,
do,
I love that.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like these most New Orleans houses are made to be lived in and out of. Um, we live on the stoop and the street and the yard as much as we do inside the house, and I love that about it.
Made a comment to a friend the other day about like how the weather was so great, and I was just like, glad to have the house open. And it didn't really process. I was like, maybe that is a local colloquialism to say like to have the house opened, to open up the house when the weather gets nice. But absolutely, and it does have a connotation also of like the house is open, come on by, right? Hanging out on
Yes.
the porch, saying
I
good
think we
morning.
do. We mean that. When the house is open, we don't mean we just the winter is finally broken and we're able to let air out the house. We mean it's time. Yes, you come in, we'll go out. Like we mean it's open in a very different way than just not stuffy anymore, which I
And
think is
there's music in my neighborhood for real, I'm in the ninth ward, so it
yeah.
is.
The other day, like literally 3 days ago, I came home and I couldn't drive down like the block just before my block, and I thought, well, something is wrong. I wonder what's wrong. I go around and I get to my house. I when I got out of my car is when I was like, oh wait a minute, like a party is happening down there. It must be good because the street's blocked off. I gotta go check it out, and it was somebody's like birthday
Go get a
party, and it
hot
wasn't
plate,
like
yeah.
officially blocked off, but it was blocked off, and it was great. And you just go in, yeah, hang out, and meet your neighbors,
Been
and
invited into so many random house parties. Right when I jazz fest, St. Patty's Day,
mm-hmm.
whatever holiday it might be.
Yeah, you just gotta be willing to say yes. Just say yes.
Yeah, we're all just standing around at the gate,
Right?
waiting for you to come through.
Exactly. So we made it to 6:30. Um, yeah, we did it. I want to thank you again for joining me
Yeah,
for
thanks
Book
for having
Banter.
me.
Of course, it was fun talking to you. And you're gonna keep me in the loop about your next book. 'Cause
Oh
it's gonna be
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Well, take a little pause, but I'm sure I'll be picking back up on readings. I have a reading in Dallas with Inner Moonlight, so that'll be podcasted. So have that on the socials, but I'll be mostly I think mostly reading from mostly new stuff in the fall. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm excited. I will keep my eye on all of the events on the Litwire. See, everyone, keep your eye on the Litwire, and then we'll know when to hear some of your new material. So.
Cool.
All right, y'all. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you later. Have a good night.
Have a good night.